goals of this site are not, commercial production, right? This site hasn't been developed to grow a lot of any one thing to turn into money. It's to meet our own needs and really to learn what works and what doesn't. Well, both a learning nursery and a plant nursery. A nursery of ideas and a nursery of actually genetic material to apply to that site, to client sites. I mean, it applies to everywhere that I work. So we'll start by looking over at our shiitake laying yard where we grow a bunch of shiitakes for ourselves. Oh, that's fruiting. You see that? It's starting to pop.
Oh, yeah.
So I might just leave that out.
Yeah.
This is native harvest. So this is worth soaking. It's not it's a strain that does respond all right to soaking. Migrate right over to here. Here's our laying yard. We had this in the wrong spot for like 4 years. We had it up in the woods. Up in the woods, walking straight uphill above the house. What did we lack? What were some things we lacked that you really need in a good laying yard for mushrooms? Even though we're pretty far from the house, this is as far as we can get and still be basically in zone 1. Why is that? There's a driveway, right? We do leave our property on a daily basis, basically, even if it's on foot or on bike. I don't even need to get out the car sometimes and see, all right, are the mushrooms pinning? Are they starting to produce? Or are they ready? Once they're pinning, then we really stop really often and look. This is about exactly when you want to harvest them. So I don't have my knife on me, but a knife is great because you can cut it right at the base, but if you don't have your knife, what I like to do is actually leave the stem in. Well, it's not going to work.
So those are red.
So you want to not pull this out of the log. It's nice to harvest the stems because even though the stems aren't really edible, they're great for soups and dry them and then just make soup stock with them. So this is pretty much when you want to get them. You see how they're just almost fully curled, open, they still have a little curve? That's good. Once they get a little further and they start to really flatten, that's gone by. So if you're a real shiitake producer, you want pressurized water access and you're going to like spritz them down to keep getting them to keep growing. We get lucky enough with the weather enough times that we get a good shiitake yield. In terms of macro, right, we're on the driveway, we're really deep shade. We're in coniferous, that's key because what happens, when are these most likely to fail due to drying out too much? What time of year can even in a forest really dry out heavily? Early spring, April. Sun's high and there's no leaves. Full shade, hardcore shade, good water access, really visible. Zone 1. What's the big predator of mushrooms? Yeah, slugs. Slugs can't cross copper. And so I've dumpster dove all this copper on an old job, and what we did was just lay everything down on the copper. Yeah, you can soak them 2-3 times a summer and get shiitake over and over. Sugar maple is what we found is the best for us. Red oak is prized for it, and hop hornbeam, ironwood. Almost any wood will make shiitake. We do some red maple because it's available and plentiful, but doesn't last as long. So what we're gonna do is just soak some logs here in a second, and I've got to look at my varieties to see. We're looking for a warm weather or a wide-ranging, strain to know which ones we're gonna soak right now. You have a Macintosh apple, right? That's the strain, right? That's the variety, the cultivar. So the cultivars of these shiitake is like WW44. Super exciting name, right? Night Velvet, Miss Happiness is a cold weather strain we have. We have like 5 different strains of shiitake here. Right now, we want to soak the shiitake that is non-cold weather, which means it's responsive to soaking. What I have here in this pile are cold weather strains which don't respond to soaking very well. This is Miss Happiness, and she's really great for just chilling here and fruiting every now and then when the weather allows. 12 to 24 hours, but no one agrees about best soak times. You know, there's a lot of different theories. So this is what it looks like. You take the log from here and you just pop it in, and the top ones will push the bottom ones down. Yeah, you can. Just be real careful. Don't let it splash back onto you because it'll... Yeah, it's on its way out. But they can still fruit. They can definitely still fruit. Thank you. Awesome. Great. So that'll sit there till tomorrow. We'll pull them out tomorrow, stack them up, and then they'll start fruiting within a few days. Say we harvest 20 to 40 pounds of shiitake a year. They're about $14 a pound, organic, to $16 for mushrooms that aren't this good. We eat $500 of shiitake a year. I wouldn't spend $500 on shiitake. I wouldn't want to, but I want to eat that much shiitake. And I have the wood, and I don't mind cutting wood and moving wood, even if I could be working for money instead with that time. I like to do it, so that's why I do it. That was brought up, like, why do you do this? And like, it's mainly for the quality of the food. It's not per se to save money. It's mainly to eat what we want to eat at the quality we want to eat. And even if we spent $500, we couldn't buy mushrooms like this. All we're doing is intentionally rotting wood and on the way getting a food medicine crop, right? I mean, that's what we're doing with everything else in the system, right? We're intervening in the system as it does something it would do anyways and steering it to get the kind of yield that enhances our life and the living community of the site the most. Driveway farming. What is this stuff here?
Is it sunchoke?
Yep, Jerusalem artichoke or sunchoke. What do you think the material that this is growing in is? Original grade. Before there's any road here, what had to happen to make this road?
This is fill.
This is filled, right? We're cut there, back behind Grant's cut. This is fill. So we're at least 3-4 feet up, if not 5 or 6 feet up in fill, i.e. compacted crap. And here is J-choke, raging life, producing all manner of calorie crops for us, and also nectar crops. And so for 2 years running now, we've harvested the driveway in early spring, which is when we have the least amount of food. You come out after a winter, dig up the side of the driveway just lightly, and there's, dozens of pounds of Jerusalem artichokes, which you can definitely live on. I mean, they're a good calorie crop. It's like digging up pasta, right? Probably nutritious pasta. And they're growing right in this medium. But why do they look so happy in this medium? What's water? Right, look at the runoff of the road. Let's look at grading here. Let's zoom up the Yeoman scale of permanence. And the first place to go, even before the sunshine, is slope. Where's the water going? Kind of coming this way. Some's running this way. Some's making it right through here. And look at the vigor of this. Look at the vigor of these. And why would this have a lot of nutrients in this runoff? We normally, until the last few weeks with the permaculture courses, have a bunch of geese and ducks here, and they chill all in this zone, really poop up the driveway. So when it rains, a bunch of that nitrogen comes right here, on its way downhill, and on its way we get a yield, right? And we get the biological filtration. This could be going on everywhere. On any in-between space, you have an in-between space, put J-chokes in it. Don't know what to do with that in-between gnarly spot. Sunchokes, and it's a survival crop. So most of us on even an acre or two can find like hundreds of lineal feet of places to just stuff J-chokes. As we enter now into kind of the heart of zone 1, just try to take in the structure. Don't worry about the species. Feel out the structure. That's the important part here, right? The slope, the landform, the water movement, the aspect, and then also the vegetative structure that's taking place. So let's walk right along towards the primary ridge. Now careful as we walk in here, there's going to be plants, new eleuthero and some other plants planted here, but taste this bee balm. This is a really neat food source. It's a flower.
Tastes like oregano.
Bee balm, Monarda. It's in the mint family. When a plant comes up like this, what's it doing down below? Yeah, when it shoots up like this, it's tending to just go straight down. Not always, but oftentimes. So you can tell the soil profile and a taprooting nature, sometimes just from the form of the plant above ground. And it's actually awesome at soil decompaction. Someone I know who's planted these in like a clay, terrible soil above a stone wall and at the base of the stone wall, and he just like, with a rock bar stuck in roots of bee balm and a host, coreopsis, thermopsis, a host of flowering perennials. And now we can dig in there with a shovel 6 years later. If there's one insect that could use our help, there's more than one, but what would one insect be that could really use our help? Bees, right? So we always want to be promoting nectary crops whenever possible. So this is part of a guild, right? Below this peach. Yeah. So let's walk right in here and follow the yellow brick road here.
Did you already harvest peaches this year?
This is really neat because we're now under an overstory of peach. Understory of gooseberry, comfrey, eleuthero coming up, flowers, raspberries. This is the kind of structure that you get after 4 to 6 years. Here's a pear coming on. This is one of the first. It was starting to get eaten, so I was actually sweetening up before others. Our first year where we're getting kind of a lot of pears. You see them up here? Pretty heavy with pears. There's never been anything sprayed on these except foliar feed. I only have a few that are this old on this ridge, and then I have maybe 15 others scattered around. There's bedrock there. You guys are all hanging on bedrock. I think at the bottom of this hole I was just hacking on bedrock with the pickmatic. So the roots have to spread out here. At first I got really depressed when I started reading the nursery catalogs, and they're like, plant in well-drained location. Plant this plant in a well-drained, sunny location. In sandy loam or silty loam. But I don't have any of that.
Probably well drained, right?
Yeah.
Like a highway.
It'll be sandy loam in a couple million years. You got to take all that stuff with a grain of salt. You can still grow them on bedrock. It'd be nice to get an honest nursery catalog that's like, prefers well-drained sandy loam, but will grow in crap wetland site, or will grow in a terrible, dry, droughty spot. Comfrey, it's an herbaceous perennial, right? And look at the form of it. What do you think it's doing down below? Just like breaking up the soil, a little bit of like biological TNT in there. And it's what we call a dynamic accumulator. So it's actually mining nutrients from down low, especially minerals, and bringing them up into the surface. And when we chop and drop them, whack with a scythe or a machete, and just drop down, we're feeding this tree with materials and nutrients that were further down than this tree could access. You know, every year, a plant or two will die, or 10. They just do that sometimes. So we have a lot of them. I don't know why that one died, but it did. One's replacing it that we did not plant. This is a shoot. Look at this seaberry right here. And this planted itself. We didn't plant this. We planted this line. Wow, this is a really easy harvest one. You feel that? You can just, that's the easiest harvesting one. I mean, look at that. I just got a handful. They just roll right off, and it's not that thorny. So that is a seedling variety, but that might be worth, depending on how it tastes, it might be worth putting a name to it. So patterns to details, macro to micro, what's going on here? Where are we now? Slope, percent grade. Yeah. Probably at least 20 right here. Southwest, yeah. So a lot of that's west, and actually on the other side of this ridge is what? Northwest, We're southwest now. Not the greatest access, right? Soils, what do we see in the soils here? I think it's pretty dry, pretty wet up here. Top of this watershed. Pretty dry, really droughty, yeah. Shallow, definitely shallow. Bedrock right near the surface. And then now let's zoom down like vegetation. Kind of lush-ish for it being dry.
Yeah.
A lot of different layers here happening. Yep, there's big birch here, which I haven't cut down yet because I want the humidity in the soil. Don't want to lose all the humidity out of here. So when I moved here, this whole zone, this whole half acre we're on, southwest facing, droughty, wouldn't grow anything. Probably before I moved here, it hadn't been mowed, and the woman who had owned the place was mowing the land, hadn't been mowed in 10 plus years. And then when I moved here, it stayed in that same situation. It was kind of wasteland. It wouldn't grow anything. And I knew it was southwest facing and could be really productive. So I started watering it, and even I started spreading a lot of seed on it. None of the seed would take. So then I started watering it and trying to fertilize it. I even put some fish emulsion through a hose, mixed in with water, and tried to fertilize the site. Nothing really took. I figured, well, there's no harm. I remember learned about swales in college in a permaculture course. I'm gonna try these swales. And I had a little backhoe on my tractor at the time, and it was totally against what I thought would be a good idea to drive a piece of heavy equipment into this site that was doing poorly and drive on there with heavy equipment to try to help it out. I didn't have anything to lose, so I came up here with the backhoe on the tractor and dug these swales. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I planted baby little sea berries that were this tall on them. Immediately after digging the swales, I seeded it again. And that year, this same land that hadn't grown anything basically for 15 plus years produced a crop of hay, grasses, about this tall twice. And I sided it and it came up twice. The following year, it was able to come up 3 times and I started grazing it. And now you see what kind of production we have here. We have this kind of biomass. It's nothing to write home about as far as being an awesome pasture, but compared to what was going on here, it's quite impressive. In the first year after doing the swales, it produced dozens of times more biomass in that 1 year than it produced in 15 years before. And that's when I realized what was happening here or wasn't happening here. Water wasn't getting into the soil. There was nothing to stop it or check its flow like this swale. So now water hits here, the soil's improving because of the grasses, so it's starting to run in by itself a little bit, but before it had no grasses, it had no biomass to help. Every stem is a little puncture in the soil horizon that water can find its way in and moisture can get in. That wasn't there, so water was all running off. So we started with the swales, and then the improvement worked backwards and downhill. And now not only are there swales, but we're also infiltrating water uphill of the swales where there's the sward of material as well as in the swales. So now it's like a positive feedback loop of health, and before it was a positive feedback loop of disease, of lack of health. And whenever we can, of course, we're trying to introduce a high leverage action that's going to cause a positive feedback loop of health. It's not just going to be health enhancing with that one action. It's going to introduce a feedback loop that's positive for the health of the site over and over again, cycling into the future. So that's what these swales and seeding and planting nitrogen fixers and then grazing all have done. Each one by itself did some good, especially the swales as foundational. But then followed up with those other actions, they created this spinning loop of positive feedback in a healthy direction, in a soil building direction. We're right on bedrock, and the bottom of these swales are thick roots now on bedrock. That's a worm the size of which I'm seeing in my vegetable gardens. There wasn't any worms like that here on bedrock before we started getting some biology going on. So now that subsoil is just chock full of roots, chock full of carbon. So this place has gone from the least productive, least healthy area of this site to one of the most productive and abundant. Now it's a medicinary. It's a living pharmacopoeia right now, literally. And it's a great place to graze. And it's helping the watershed downstream. And then stewarding and management. And now the limiting factor is management. How well we graze it, how often, at what timing. Running this through the rumen of an animal and coming back out of soil is the best thing we can do now. But we can also go through with a machete and pruners and whack, 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 start culling the biomass and cycling the biomass ourselves. The evidence that we could reverse climate change, the anthropogenic climate change, we could suck out all the carbon that's been put in the atmosphere since the Industrial Revolution in a few years through managing the carbon cycle in the soil. Now, if we don't do anything, it's still way better off than it was, right? It's still an advancing ecosystem with nitrogen fixers in it and tons of food for wildlife. That's fine, but it can be most optimal if people are participating in it. And we can also make our living the best if we're participating in it, right? We can actually get a yield, right? That principle. So this is maybe like a 50-foot long hazelnut hedge. There's a few different varieties in here. They're producing pretty well. They got grazed kind of heavily one year, and I was bummed about that. I was like, oh, we really knocked the plants back a bit. I mean, they left the tops, but they kind of grazed the understory pretty heavily. And then we had a pleasant surprise. What might have happened because of the grazing?
More stem dense.
Yeah, all these shoots. It became much more multi-stem. The stems shot out and quadrupled the number of stems or more. Oftentimes, disturbance is a better thing than we realized at the time. This is an on-contour swale system with the top one being a ditch, getting the water to here, and then it's just like cascade. So this is just the second year for these plants. Grapes, vines are crazy. Vines are worth planting a lot of. I've never seen a plant that wasn't a vine make this much fruit in its second year. We provide the structure, we replace some of the energy with our own built environment, and then it can just rage it on the fruit front. It can put its energy into production rather than structure. That's the brilliance of vines in a lot of ways, and also in terms of speed of growth. This is a steep slope with steep swales. You want to be careful putting swales on steep slopes. I don't mean to suggest you don't. But I don't think this is definitely anywhere too steep a slope to put swales on. I think swales are needed more on relatively steeper slopes than less because of why? The water's running off more. You got to hold it on more. And then we got another few swales below us planted into seaberry. And then it fades to like totally zone 4 mayhem. There's a lot of chestnuts planted throughout there. There's a bunch of walnuts, oaks, a couple black locust hedges. And it goes for another like 150, 200 yards as just jungle craziness that we graze. We have grazed for a few years, but not enough because it's very difficult access. So our strategy right now to deal with that zone is to get in there and flail mow paths for fencing, impermanent fencing, graze it hard, mow it a bit, graze it hard, and get on top of it for a couple seasons. That takes human labor. They're grafted. Wherever you see a tag is a different graft, and that's where different varieties on the tree. So there's Prairie Spy, there's Roxbury Russet, Ashmead's Kernel. There's a whole wide variety on here. That allows us to get not only different harvest times, but different qualities of fruit, right? And so this is surrounded by this thicket of black locust. We actually planted them all around. You see there's one here. And I've started to cut the black locust now in zone 1. Someone once said during the tour, they're like, wow, if you leave here and no one's here, the place is abandoned, it's just gonna be black locust. And that's the only thing that's gonna be the overstory. Like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, the plan's not to leave, right? If it is abandoned, it's not the end of the world. We'll have a really productive system. There'll be a lot of other stuff besides black locust, but there will be a lot of black locust. Within a system of intensive management, constantly cutting this black locust is free soil and free nitrogen for this tree. That replaces inputs that would otherwise have to come from off-site, right? We got a veggie system right in here, cover crop of buckwheat, carrots, onions, potatoes, kale, some other stuff kind of behind this. We would have loved to run veggie gardens longer. It would have been much more efficient to have longer rows. But right by that apple, that other apple for instance, there's just a hunk of bedrock coming out of the ground. We couldn't run the rows through that. So we just had to squeeze in the veggie gardens where the soil allowed. That's why they're all over. There's another bunch up by the house. It's not the most efficient way to do it if you don't have bedrock everywhere. You see this sun trap that's being created? Right, so about an hour ago, the sun's just leaving the end of the sun trap because of this big sugar maple, these 2 sugar maples, which aren't probably in an ideal spot, but we're not gonna cut down beautiful big trees like that, right? Those are the oldest trees on the property, basically. And we've got the building facing southwest, and that's a super hot microclimate on the north end of this terrace that's created that happens to be filled with water, but we also have a lot of other flat land. It's basically a solar amphitheater. So let's look at where this water goes. We're gonna fish these into the pond. Normally they're laid right down right here. Yeah, let's pull them. Yeah, can you put them right through the bottom?
Yep.
Okay, so we've had all sorts of challenges with the rice. It's very productive when it works well, but you need a really long season. And the wetland weeds also get quite intensive. So in the first year, it's awesome, there's no weeds because it's a new system, it's excavated. There's no seed bank, in an excavated zone. And then since then, it's gotten weedier every year. And I think we're at the point where we're trying to figure out if it's worth it as a staple crop. We've had, good results with what rice can do in rough soil, but then there's a lot of management challenges. So we'll get the siphon going. So now once that's put in, that was left high, so it left a plug of water in it. You don't have to always suck on it. That took me a few years to realize, but if you just lower it down and get a plug of water running out, that's gonna suck over the pond berm. Okay, so now the siphon's going, and we can fill in the paddy just like this.
How often do you do that?
So normally we'll hit this up maybe once a week in the reproductive season, which ends in the vegetative season, which ends, in early July. This is bringing us water, but it's also bringing us nutrients, right? And if we're running out of that fertigation skank pool that we call it, this stuff will actually be bringing a lot of nutrients into here. We're going from surface flow to nutrients, then to plants. Any overflow might be full of nutrients. Do we want those nutrients to go back into a pond or to plants? We want them to go to swales. So all of these overflows go around the pond between those grain trials we're doing over there and the pond, and goes out to a swale system. It goes back and forth down that field. This is a wet climate generally, and if you make a flat area, it's gonna stay pretty wet even if you don't feed it water and it's not raining. And then the wetland weeds can persist. So you're not killing the wetland weeds necessarily when you let it dry, but you are killing the dryland weeds when you soak it. But you want to ideally be able to do both, and rice doesn't care, it can take either. We're also having trouble holding a lot of water. It's kind of leaky. If we held water better, we could probably kill off the understory better and grow the rice better as a result. I'm not ready to throw the towel on the rice as a whole. I'm gonna keep those two paddies for now, but it's also a management thing. If we have more people here and we really need to live on this landscape, we'd probably really focus on the rice, and we'd probably get an awesome rice crop. And we probably hang out here when the birds are coming for that week, when it's about to be ready, and we'd get a lot of rice and it'd be a survival crop. It'd be awesome. So let's go down, we'll let this fill, and let's check out the amaranth and the corn little research trial here, kind of testing. We want amaranth as a seed crop, right? What's so neat about amaranth? Uber high protein. Amaranth is about the highest protein annual seed / grain crop we can grow. I've heard it's not actually a grain. Well, it's a seed crop, and amaranth really likes it here. And so we should potentially be able to get about 40 pounds of amaranth from this little plot, which isn't very big. It wasn't too much work. And so we varied the centers. It's real close spacing here. And as we go this way, we went from 24-inch spacing on the far south side to 8, 4, 6, 12-inch spacing in here. We just have really thinner and closer together to see, or bigger spacing, less spacing to see where's the best yield. And then here on this berm, we've got a willow seaberry planting hedge. And now look at this growth, right? This has been in the ground only 3 years. This is subsoil from the bottom of the pond, intentionally compacted by an excavator. And look at, what these plants are doing. Even the willow's actually not totally happy. The seaberry's fine. It's mulched a little bit, not much. So it's a crop that you can actually produce in a really rough spot. And then we go down into the swale zone where there's a lot of elderberry. You see the elders down there? There's mulberry, black walnuts, a lot more black locust, apple, chestnut, swamp white oak, all as a savanna pattern down there. All swaled for the most part, yeah. So we grow a lot of cilantro now. It's all throughout the gardens, and we want to grow it into seed as well, which lets us grow even more because you can get a lot of seed. It's cheap, and you just broadcast it. And then these will be winter greens. We'll like harvest this kale into usually late November, and then we're letting this stuff go crazy because this is the most nutritious thing we can grow, and we don't ever plant it. Lamb's quarter. I mean, basically, this is many times more nutritious than most of the greens we cultivate in the garden. It's not quite as palatable right off the bat, but when you get used to it. So that's kind of a really good starting place. I would recommend if you haven't started to develop your gardens yet, first learn all the wild foods, or at least a lot of them, and start learning how to eat them and what's good about them, what's valuable about them, how to prepare them. Of course, there's a role for cultivated foods, I think, probably, but there's so much food already in the landscape. I kind of laugh at myself now that I started by gardening, by figuring out, okay, what can I grow here? Not realizing, oh wait, what already grows here? What can I already eat here?